Good morning and welcome to the Conscious Capitalism panel discussion on culture, values, and leading through crisis. I'm Devlin Lyles, President of Improving Houston Office, and I'll be your host and moderator today. I'll be asking questions to each of the panelists and would encourage you to do so as well. In the QA feature on the side of your screen, there's a button to submit a question, and once some are submitted, a list that you can vote up and down as well. We'll be using a mixture of prepared questions and those from the audience. Now to introduce our panel, I'm joined by some great thought leaders in the conscious capitalism space today. Unfortunately, one of our panelists was unable to join us, so Greg Massey won't be joining us, but Greg serves as the CEO of First United Bank and Trust. However, we do have Karen Sammon, Jeff Schiefelbein, and Curtis Hite joining us. Karen is the CEO of Next 7 Gen, a holding company for snow belt manufacturers that are transforming to support the demands of the fourth industrial revolution while retaining their roots and culture. She's also launching the Virtuous Kitchen, an operation designed for table service restaurants that are looking to safely expand their business through delivery. Virtuous Kitchen will actually be opening its first location in the second half of this year. Jeff Schiefelbein. Jeff serves as co-founder and chief culture officer for an energy advisory firm called Five. Jeff's firm has received numerous accolades, including 4 consecutive appearances on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list, and various best places to work accolades, including multiple listings by Texas Monthly. And finally, Curtis Hite. Curtis is the CEO and chairman of Improving, a software consulting and training company, which he founded in 2007. With a focus on conscious capitalism, he's grown the company to over 100 million in revenue, 600 plus employees, and 11 offices, providing software development, technology consulting, agile training, and coaching to our clients globally. So welcome to each of you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Devlin.
So we're going to get right to the discussion. In the past several weeks, we've heard almost everything from record level explosive growth for some companies to bankruptcy. So let's start with a general check-in. How's your company weathering the storm? Jeff, we'll start with you.
All right, thanks, and thank you all for hosting this. I would put our company on the good side of that spectrum, mostly good. What we've been monitoring since day one of the shutdown is the degradation of energy usage by our clients, right? People are using less power on the whole. It's surprising to see some industries, when you think of manufacturing, water districts, cities, hospitals, are obviously using more power. But many of them, commercial real estate and schools, are using 10 to 40% less electricity and natural gas than they were prior to the shutdown. So all that to say, our revenue is and will be impacted both by decreased energy usage, but also by people that are not paying energy bills or slow paying their energy bills. So we have a revenue destruction. At the same time, we're having great sales. Our sales are as good as they've maybe ever been. Because I think what we're finding is that decision makers that have to talk about electricity and natural gas contracts and strategies, they have the time for it, right? They're just like you and I, they're sitting in front of their computer more often, more available. And B, I think they're tuning into the fact that there's a proactive way to reduce and control that cost. So as a company, I would say that we're doing pretty good, not great, pretty good. And that's allowed us the freedom to focus on clients and even focus on people that are not our clients and say, how can we lend our expertise during this difficult time in the place that we're experts?
That's great to hear that you guys are weathering that pretty well. Thank you. Karen, how about you?
So as a leader of 2 startups, there's a kind of a different experience, and I'll answer for both of them, and then also what I'm seeing as an advisor to different companies. You're absolutely spot on. I mean, there's companies that are doing great, and those that have closed down, and there are challenges on both ends of the spectrum. With Next 7 Gens, we're operating as a holding company, investing. Our original model was to invest to acquire 100% of the assets of the companies that we're looking at. When COVID hit, all attention drifted away from any kind of acquisition discussions, and many companies were hit in different ways. And so, when I looked at what we were doing and some of the companies that we are interested in acquiring, started rethinking how we were going to approach the businesses with less than 100% to keep them on the rails. With the virtuous kitchen. The virtuous kitchen is a concept that of providing ghost delivery for table service. So in this industry pre-COVID, there was all kinds of talk about the explosive delivery market. Now the restaurant industry has been decimated. So there's a rethinking of how to approach the business models to support the industries where we're focused on. And then lastly, as an advisor to different industries, I see a lot like what Jeff said. Some businesses doing extremely well, but then having to struggle through how to keep up with demand, and those that have seen a significant impact to their business, and then they're looking at a very different set of challenges. So helping people think through how to stay focused on their people, communicate clearly. It's just all over the board.
It definitely sounds like it. We'll be digging in more as we continue. How about you, Curtis?
Well, as a professional services company that focuses on technology, we are obviously very reliant upon our customer and our customer base. And two of our verticals were travel, transportation, and energy. Those were our number 2 and number 3 verticals. And as you can imagine, in this environment, and with our tight coupling with those customer bases, improving has actually taken a pretty significant and hard hit. Our Q1 revenues, even though this started to impact us in early March or late February, so pretty early, we started to see an impact. We still had a record March and a record quarter for that matter. But in a matter of about 45 days, our revenues decreased by 17.8% with and continued to kind of find where I think our new bottom is going to be, somewhere in the neighborhood of a pullback of about 20 to 22% of our revenues in 2 months, which it's pretty significant and pretty hard for a services-based company that has a very high cost of goods sold in our people. So it's created a lot of challenge, and it really creates an environment where we have to be able to react quickly and be able to respond to our clients and to new challenges. Just one example, in our 3rd largest vertical, which was travel and transportation, we now, just 45 days after the first notification, only have 1 client in that vertical. So I have a lot of empathy for certain industries that are actually being crushed by what's happening.
So that gives us a nice segue into, I assume, given the turbulence that Karen talked about, the changes that Jeff talked about, and then some of those impacts that you were touching on, that you've had to face tough decisions in the past several months. How were those decisions affected and informed by your values, potentially the values of conscious capitalism, and how did you face them?
Well, when we first met as a senior leadership team, that is the very first thing that I put in front of the presidents of every enterprise, of our senior leaders, was our guiding principle, starting with what we consider to be the foundation of conscious capitalism. We did a full review of those: our identity, excellence, involvement, dedication, our ambition of creating environments of trust with all of our stakeholders. And those are the things that I wanted everybody to review. And we continue to do this on a weekly, if not daily basis. And we did have to make some hard decisions. Just in full transparency, improving did have to go through a set of layoffs, about 10% of our employee base. And in doing so, though, we tried to lean in, especially to these values of trust and demonstrating respect, really giving these people dignity, being transparent and honest with all of our stakeholders about where our company is and the challenges we're facing. So for a company like Improving, it wasn't a time to abandon our core values and our guiding principles, but to lean into them even more.
Thank you. And Jeff, did you see similar things at 5?
Sure, we did, and it kind of goes back to the first statement that I made, that we know there's both a revenue reduction now and one coming, and we're trying to kind of keep everything together. So a few tough decisions from the very beginning. One was just tightening the belt, right? Trying to figure out what needs to come off the ship day one of this shutdown so that we could weather the storm. That involved a lot of our outside stakeholders as well. That could be digital marketing partners, PR partners. We had to make some of those cuts to different programs we had in place. One thing I was happy with in kind of the way that we faced that was making sure that each one of those stakeholders had a person-to-person conversation with one of the founders of our company. So it wasn't a blast email or just a notification that we were putting things on hold. It was a time to check in, and that gave us a chance to also get to the humanizing level of this and to ask those stakeholders, how is this impacting them? What are they facing in their personal and professional lives? And what I would say with the external stakeholders, our strong relationships got stronger, even as we were pulling back some of the money we maybe were going to spend with them this year. And then from an internal side, as we went through and we said, what does the model look like in all these different COVID scenarios, from how long we're shut down to how long we ramp back up, it was pretty clear that we needed to make some internal reductions as well. So we went and did a across-the-board salary reduction for everybody in the company and communicated that in several different forms. And then to step up and lead with what we thought was doing the right thing, all of the owners/founders of this company, we also took a larger salary reduction. And I think about Conscious Capitalism, one of the things that I'm really proud of, before and during this crisis, is this whole idea of the stakeholder model, that there wasn't a single decision that was made that wasn't vigorously debated, that we didn't try to turn around and look at every corner and every lens so that we could understand how this was going to impact each of the stakeholders. And then again, to make it very humanizing, both by making the announcement and then in every case that we can, doing an individual follow-up, a couple days after an announcement, like a salary reduction, to check in on how each individual person is doing. So trying to lend as much support that's both business support, but is also emotional and human support during this time has allowed, like I said, the good relationships have become even stronger.
That's good to hear. Karen, you've got some significant exposure across multiple industries. How has this played out for you?
Well, as I'm listening to Jeff and Curtis talk, I'm thinking of the many crises I had to lead Power Technology through, and it's the speed and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic that it makes all these decisions just so much more challenging, and it gives me great hope that we have leaders like Jeff and Curtis in their positions to work with employees. People are afraid. The level of fear is so profound right now. It's not just for their jobs and for their families, but it's for their life. And being able to make the decisions and doing these difficult furloughs and layoffs with integrity and empathy, it doesn't make it any easier. And so I not being responsible for 1,100 employees and their families is for me is rather a blessing. Although as an achiever, I feel like this need to fix and to do something. That said, I've been leaning into our communities, but with regard to the businesses that I've started, your values as a leader are what they are. They're inherent to who you are. And I've had the situation. It's not something that I had to even think twice about. I was looking at a business that that manufactures and assembles. They're called medical coaches, and they manufacture hospitals that are mobile. And as I was looking at the company, they're an old company, and they have a deep culture, and they're in a bit of trouble. And they had some inventory, meaning these mobile hospitals that were 80% complete. And without even having a conversation about my own interest in seeing what the possibility could be, there's need for mobile hospitals across the country, and especially in a time of a pandemic. There was a quick call to our congressman and to the governor's office, and regardless of my interest, just disclosing that I've been looking at them and that they may need this inventory, and hopefully it gets this company off back on the rails where they belong. But being in service of other people, thinking about other stakeholders, whether in your business it's your employees, your customers, suppliers, communities. In my case, it extends out to the communities in New York State and beyond. And so that was an easy decision that is just aligned with who I am as a person, with my values. With the virtuous kitchen, I could see a lot of ways of being virtuous pre-COVID. We were focused on increasing healthy meals and farm to fork, and helping small chains extend into different new markets. I spent 30 years in the restaurant retail industry. On the technology side, and so leveraging technology to provide data and to streamline organizations was part of what we're planning to do. And then with COVID, there's opportunities to open kitchens that are remote to provide delivery, again, still providing good, nutritious food at affordable prices, but also bringing employees back to work in a safe environment. So leveraging the principles of conscious capitalism and the values that I bring to business are inseparable.
Thank you. So I want to touch on a bit of what you talked about there. A lot of what we hear is conflicting. It is unclear. It's, we talk about the economy and you hear it referred to as, well, we're going to reopen it as if it's a light switch. The next 6, 12, and 18 months just don't have a good, clear picture on it. Kind of digging into that uncertainty and a lot of the turmoil you've talked about and how it started to play out across it. What's your perspective on how this is going to affect manufacturing in the restaurant space? And the reasoning behind it in that kind of 6, 12, and 18 month time frame?
Well, I'll caveat my response by the fact that my crystal ball has never worked very well. But everything that I can that I understand about industries where I've spent significant time, there's some good things and some not so good things, and I think that it's dependent. We were talking before we got on this conference about the reaction of different parts of the country. I mentioned that I'm in New York, and New York is certainly hardest hit in the United States. And while I am in upstate New York near Syracuse, COVID-19 is a very real thing, and it is very serious, and we are not open for business. Other parts of the country, are different. They have, there's counties without any COVID related cases at all. So when I look at manufacturing, I think that there's an opportunity to do certain things here in the U.S. I don't think that we're going to become a U.S.-centric world with regard to manufacturing, but there are opportunities, and they still exist depending on the industry. And I was looking at largely tech-based manufacturing with software content. So they will slowly come out, and it's going to be industry dependent. The restaurant industry, I'm much more concerned about. That it is totally decimated. There are among the industry's leaders and in the small chefs and the large concept CEOs that I talk to, 30% of restaurants will not reopen. And when you look at an industry that has 11 million employees, not including suppliers in the supply chain, for roughly 7 to 8 million employees from the restaurant industry alone are out of work, and they'll go. Some of them will find business, jobs other places. But this is an industry that has been part and parcel with with who we are. We love to break bread. We love the community aspect of going to a restaurant. It is going to take years, and it will return in a very different way. And it's not just about opening restaurants and getting people to feel safe going. It's about the safety of the employees. And so you can kind of think through all the different ways that the industry will be impacted. So I do expect that it will be, the end of 2021 and 2022 when we'll start to see something that resembled normal.
Thank you. Curtis, kind of for the professional services space and the software development and technology space, what's your take on the next 6, 12, and 18 months?
As I mentioned, there are a lot of companies that are coupled with the industries that they are involved in. So it's going to be highly dependent on those industries. But what I can say in general, as Karen mentioned, is that really the uncertainty, there is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty because of the complexity, the challenge that is before us and the interdependencies that exist. Some geographies, as Karen mentioned, aren't being affected at all. I mean, probably close to half of the counties in Texas, most of those rural, really have had little to no impact based on the virus. And then you have cities and communities like the Northeast and the Northwest that have been hit hard, right? And the same is true for these industries. Travel and transportation, I really believe that industry has been permanently changed. It could be for the better, but it's going to be hard, I think, in the short term as well, very hard. And there are other industries that are thriving. And I think that this dichotomy of what's really happening right now is creating some of the confusion that's out there. But like Karen, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but my belief is that this is a period of change. We will not be returning to some old normal. What we return to will be some new normal. And it's not, there will be jobs. That are permanently affected. There will have to be careers that are changed potentially as we shift people. And that's a hard reality, I think, for a lot of people to face, is that there will be a huge amount of change, huge. That's almost certain. And for most people, change is uncomfortable. It's scary, it creates fear. And I feel that as conscious leaders, it's our ability to accept that reality and help bring calm times like these.
Thank you. Jeff, there's been a lot of focus on the energy space. Kind of, if you peer into your cloudy, cracked crystal ball, what's that look like?
I think I got Karen's crystal ball when she threw it out, so it's really not working for me. I'll tell you that the question when you pose this and you say what happens over 12 or 18 or 24 months, the biggest factor that is unknown is how long is this going to last, and the longer it lasts, the harder it's going to be to ramp back up to whatever new normal commerce looks like. So it is hard to predict or to understand because there's not even an indicator of when the next chapter begins. So that being said, when I talk about demand destruction, what's happening in our industry, and the constraints that are going to keep coming onto capital, this whole change or paradigm shift is likely to cause energy suppliers and energy producers to get a lot more creative, right? Get more creative with product structuring, with what type of generation assets we have, with how the market is even structured. And one of the silver linings, or one of the hopes that we have, is that it also causes clients to be far more proactive, to be a participant in helping to determine what electricity and natural gas products and structures and strategies they should deploy. Think about this for a second. There are clients right now who are experiencing a 25% reduction in their energy usage. And there are energy suppliers who, if they stick to the letter of their law, their terms and conditions, are penalizing a client for using less power than they originally signed up for. And that can hurt a lot, but it also starts to bring up this conversation for a consumer, right? We serve a whole lot of the hospitals and commercial real estate throughout Manhattan, about 5% of the load. So we're getting to see this firsthand of what Karen's saying. It's different there than it is for some of our rural parts of Texas. And people are starting to realize more and more that the price on a piece of paper doesn't equal the cost over time. And there's a reason to get very, either bring in the right consulting or become very sharp and astute and smart about the way this market works. I think that as this plays out, you're going to see some of these old utilities, and especially these electricity suppliers, kind of shine through crisis. There's going to be people who, because of the way they interact with clients, because of changes they make, are really going to come through this in a better position than they maybe entered. And I think about the example I gave, maybe somebody's going to be more forgiving about changes to somebody's usage. Or for the field hospitals that our clients have had to spin up in the middle of Manhattan, you're seeing utilities do same-day turn-ons to get electricity and fuel oil geared up. So you're seeing that an industry that's notoriously known for being kind of behind the times or not concerned is able to move very quickly and be very creative. So it's nice to see that. And then as a kind of a global statement, a lot of people that I talk to, especially in Texas, have been very pleased by how quickly our environment has recovered when the carbon's been removed, right? People aren't on the roads and you're having kind of this dissipation of the smog over these cities, or our waterways are clearing up. And I think it's causing people to realize that we absolutely can impact the quality of the shared stakeholder that everybody has on this call, right? The environment is our shared stakeholder. We all have a play in that. So we're hopeful that this crisis also leads people to get on board with this conversation around renewable resources and creative ways to take care of our energy needs, but do it in a smarter way. And you can imagine something like electric vehicles, that this would accelerate the push towards those types of technologies, and at the same time push towards renewable sources of generation. But ask me in a year and then in 2 years what I got right, and it's probably not much. But I think this industry is going to come out of this, the electricity, natural gas, energy industry. And I'm not really focused in my conversation here about crude oil that much, but I think this industry is going to come out better, smarter, cleaner, and a better resource for clients than it did entering.
It's encouraging to hear. As you were talking, something that came to mind for me is a quote that is often attributed to James Lane Allen. It says, "Adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it." If we apply that to each of your businesses, what have you seen that you're proud of? What have you seen that, makes you kind of sit up a little straighter in this challenging time? And what are some of the areas you've noticed that you really want to improve in the businesses that you're touching? And I'm going to start with you, Karen.
It's a great question. You see it over and over again, and especially in yourself and with other leaders in your organization that you work with, and how they respond to challenges and adversity. And it hits different people in different ways, and you can't underestimate the amount of pressure that people feel, and that's why we need to support each other. But going back to what Curtis and Jeff were talking about, I think that through COVID, we're going to end up in a different place. For me, I love change. I seek it out. I'd like to disrupt and then transform. It's really what really motivates me. And because I'm comfortable there, I have to be careful because, as Jeff said, a lot of people are not comfortable with change. It's scary. And so that's an area that I always have been working on as a leader, because I can anticipate opportunity. And then through this whole pandemic and the time that we've had in New York, we call it the pause, thinking about the nuance between opportunity and opportunism. And you see a lot of opportunism that is damaging to others or to the environment potentially. And I do tend to agree with what Jeff is saying, that and Curtis both made this point and made it really well, that from this situation, I do believe that as conscious leaders, that our message will resonate and be amplified. I saw during the annual conference, the Conscious Capitalism annual conference, which the team successfully pivoted from doing a conference in April in person in Jersey City to a month-long conference. We increased the participation from 700 to nearly 5,000. So the need for the philosophy behind conscious capitalism and building conscious leaders and supporting conscious cultures and the whole stakeholder model is stronger than ever. So as I think about where we are today and how we grow as leaders individually and what shapes us, this is a great time for introspection, and it will be a reflection on how we succeed in the future as leaders of our own businesses and in our communities, as in part of our families, all around.
Thank you, Karen. So Curtis, how about you? What have you seen that you're really proud of as you've seen this time evolve, and what have you seen that you really want to focus on improving?
Well, I really like the quote that you put out there. It's on my business card, actually, that specific quote as well. I think in challenging times like we are finding ourselves in today, it is understandable, maybe even natural, with these additional pressures that certain behaviors may have the tendency to come out. And this is why I put that out there, is that this adversity, when it comes at us, really, we're not building the character. The character already exists inside of us, whatever that is going to be. And so it becomes revealed. And I feel that leaning into our values, and this is why I put our values in front of our company so early on, when I knew that we were going to enter this new time period with these new challenges, was that we have to remind ourselves. It is a constant reminder, not only week after week, but day after day of who we are, what we stand for. And one of our values being involvement is our success as a consequence of our collective involvement. And I'm very proud that in this time, there were 81 individuals inside of Improving that came forward with voluntary salary decreases, right? And that's a lot. If you look at our employee base at this point, you are talking about 20% of our employees, and these were not just small voluntary. And I'm very proud of that, because I think that reveals some of the genuine care that exists inside of our company for the other employees, for our stakeholders, for the company itself. And just like Jeff, our senior leaders took the largest amount of those voluntary, with at the most senior level, 100% participation in that. Another thing, just working with your clients, and in our case, they are struggling too. And it's easy to go to contracts. It's easy to try to slow play when you are when you are being pushed for cash and your clients aren't paying you on time. But it doesn't mean we need to play that disfavor forward at the same time, and we don't. We are trying to play all of our suppliers, and even though we are being pressured on the other side of that. So a lot is revealed, and some of the things that certain things are being revealed that actually identified gaps. And this is one of the silver linings. Maybe Karen, you and I talked a little bit before the session as we were waiting. Not everything is bad. Some of our processes, our communication has been greatly enhanced, just not only by the technology that we're using today, but we are doing bi-weekly, let's say, town hall meetings across the entire company, across the multiple nations and cities that Improving operates in. And that is something that is coming to stay, maybe not every 2 weeks, but this new high touch, highly interactive type of environment. And we've identified gaps in some of our processes as well. And we could complain about those gaps, or we can have people from all over the company leaning in. And that's perhaps what I'm most proud of, is seeing how our core values are playing out, especially that involvement, that our success or failure without that is truly a consequence of everybody coming together.
Thank you. And Jeff, how about at 5? What are you seeing that you're most proud of? What are you seeing that you want to improve on?
Sure, I love this. I think first and foremost I keep bringing up this human connection. One of our taglines that we use all the time is energy made human, that all business is actually about humans, and that ours just happens to be energy focused. And we've done a great job, I would say, from something I'm proud of keeping that human focus at the forefront of everything we're doing. There's a book about Netflix called Powerful, and they refer to their employees as fully formed adults. And I just love that concept that we're dealing with fully formed adults. Let's treat them as fully formed adults. So we may come out and have to make a change, deal with a tough issue. Let's also share the thought process behind it. Let's share what were some of the other alternatives. Let's share what are the decision points along the way from here that may cause us to have to pivot again. One of the ways on day one that I think we got it right is we created an internal cares team, a team that every single week is doing outreach to every single one of our employees to have a conversation that is not work-based. It's not about what is the next thing that we're working on or the next account. And we kind of struck into something that really works. We don't ask people how are they doing. We ask them how are they doing today. And that obviously changes for some of us hour to hour. And people share at that level. And then the next question, and I would encourage y'all to do this and model this behavior, we started asking people, who are you worried about or concerned about in your life because of either isolation or health or finances? And what's interesting is question number 2 is really where you find out the most about how somebody's doing today. When they start to share about a loved one, a spouse, even just what's happening in their environment, often they start to really share more about themselves. Our cares team also knows when we need to step in and do things that are special or above and beyond for somebody who's struggling. A couple weeks into it, we realized the cares team needed to have a cares team, so we did an internal version of that. We started doing that more often. And then we saw that our employees were doing that more and more with our clients and our stakeholders, our suppliers, checking in on them personally before going and diving into anything professional. So that authentic human connection has been there. We found some really neat ways to use technology. To Curtis's point, we have a Fiverr lounge that's set up on Zoom. It's just open all day, every day. And somebody might say, who wants to do a competition for planking the longest in the lounge? And 6 people pop in there and they do an exercise in the middle of the day. They might have a beer at the end of the day, or somebody says, I'm going to mix a new cocktail, come check it out. And that's all fun. But we also myself, I have 4 little kids at home. I'm so thankful that one of my business partners, his daughter is getting a master's from Pratt Institute in art therapy. Twice a week, she hosts an art class for our kids. And our kids are getting to know each other from Mexico to Manhattan, and they see each other twice a week. They're loving it. As we gone into month 2, we've started to open that up to our stakeholders' kids, clients, referral partners, whoever. We've done cooking classes with our families. We brought in chefs for that. One of our executives has a chef for a spouse. It just kind of goes on and on. My favorite was the tequila tasting we did. It had a history lesson. gave everybody 2 weeks to get the tequila shipped to their house. So just remembering that people always liked when they were coming to this office and getting to connect as humans. And if all we do is jump on video chat and have business conversations, they're losing one of the parts of what caused them to feel whole when they would go through their day and come back to their family. So that's on the proud side. The needs improvement, I think crisis shows you where your stakeholder relationships are weak. We have dozens and dozens of supplier relationships all over the US, and some of the relationships themselves are weak, or maybe we only have one point of contact. And so as we're dealing with some pretty complex needs for our clients and some hairy issues, when you don't already have a well-established relationship with an extremely important stakeholder to us doing our business, it can be frustrating because you don't feel like you're getting clarity or having an intelligent conversation. And you kind of put the mirror right back on yourself and say, what did we do leading up to this moment that could have enhanced or made this relationship better? And so I think the pause, as you call it, I like that. I'm going to start using the pause that Karen shared in New York, but the pause has caused us to realize that there's some relationships that we need to go much deeper on because they're extremely important to us, our clients, and the rest of our stakeholders.
Thank you for sharing that. I've heard a common theme, and I think it's probably attributed to the character of our panelists, of hope, of optimism, of what will change and be good on the way out of this. One of the questions from our live QA was, how do you balance leading with hope and optimism to your stakeholders, but maintaining a value of honest communication? So I'd like to start with you, Curtis, and then we'll go to Karen and Jeff. How do you balance those two?
So again, I go to our guiding principles. We lean into the trust and building trust. Stephen Covey's book references The Speed of Trust, references 13 behaviors. One of those is be transparent. Another is to talk straight. And then yet another is to confront reality. And these are all very difficult things to do in times of crisis. Yet what I've found is when we treat people responsibly and we extend that trust to them, they tend to respond in kind. And so there is a little bit of a leap of faith when we go to do that. But I think that really helps on the other side. And then our commitment as leaders. One of the things to be a leader inside of a company like Improving goes on to our 5 commitments that our leaders make to our employees. And one of those is to remain positive, remain fun. That doesn't say not in times of crisis, only in times of good. That is at all times. And while we will face challenges, we absolutely will face challenges. I believe it is a leader's responsibility, not only at Improving, but in the business community or in the faith community or in the government community, that we reduce the chaos that is around us through our own calm, through how we act and respond. Not everything is going to be good news. That's absolutely not the case. So the balance comes when you say, I am going to talk straight, I am going to confront reality, yet at the same time, all is not lost. There is hope. Yep, there is fear, but we do keep that positive message, because I assure you, if you think, and I'll conclude with this, if you really think about in the US what we have, okay, we have a lot to be grateful for. And one of my favorite sayings is that happiness is not derived from getting what you want. It actually resides more in wanting and being grateful for what you already have. And we have a lot as a country and as individuals. Doesn't mean we don't have needs, but if we can focus on our gratitude, that tends to also lead towards more hope.
Thank you. Karen, what are your thoughts?
That was beautiful. So there would be overlap. So if we consider our employees and our suppliers and customers to be fully formed adults, I like that phrase as well. Balancing hope shouldn't be very hard. First, there has to be hope. But being, as a leader during times of crisis, especially, and it's all the time, but in times of crisis, there's a selflessness, and that actually can burn out the leader during that time, because you tend to work almost 24/7, and you just keep it going because that's what needs to get done. But that selflessness needs to be balanced with self-care. But providing clear, I'm thinking about our governor Cuomo. He's done just an outstanding job, and I wasn't necessarily his biggest fan prior to COVID, but the clear, empathetic, constant, honest communication, that he has provided to New Yorkers and pretty much to the country about what is happening in New York has been nothing short of remarkable. And you have to, just thinking about your own situation in your own business, or in my situation with startups, I'm reaching out to leaders in industry just to lend an ear, and thinking about helping them craft messages or listening to their messages, and asking questions about what they're able to communicate. But if having our employees always know what's going on, and so being able to provide the honest reflection of the state of the business, like Curtis did at the beginning of this session, and talking about how the industries that we serve have been impacted, whether it's airlines, transportation, or in my case, restaurants. It's not good, and we need to be able to be honest about our ability to what things we can control, what things are not in our control, what we see now, how it's changing, and then there is I feel that the kind of the final thing that I always like to end with when I was communicating to my teams is what is hopeful. And because good things are happening and people are serving each other, and like Jeff was talking about all the different ways that his organization is providing different opportunities to learn how to cook, to learn how to paint, to help the kids, and the parents who are trying to both educate their children and to hold down the responsibilities of a job. It's creating a different type of community, and then looking at the ways that we are finding ways to connect and putting together this virtual session, this virtual conference, just to create more community and to share ideas is incredible. So again, creativity, ingenuity, entrepreneurship are all things that come from crisis. And when you can start to communicate what those silver linings are, COVID is not a silver lining. COVID is a horrible pandemic that's negatively impacting thousands, tens of thousands of lives and beyond. But what can come from it is hopeful.
Jeff, will you round us out? How do you balance these kind of competing things between hope and optimism and honest communication?
I have a huge smile on my face because I love this question, and in the way that you prepositioned this, I also want to say thank you. If you see hope and optimism come from me, and from these other two great leaders, then I think we're doing what we are supposed to do, which is leading people with hope and optimism. I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but I always think about like the hardest things we have to do as leaders outside of the pause. When you have to terminate an employee, you're facing the same conversation. You're just doing it on a micro level, right? You need to be clear. You need to give that person dignity and respect as you're talking to them. You need to be honest and calm and try to create the best possible outcome in one of the worst moments of that person's life, right? They're being terminated. The same can be said on a broad scale, right? Let's be clear, dignified, honest, calm. And I like the words, let's be appropriately transparent, which means I think that we should always be transparent with our company and our workforce, our coworkers. But what's interesting is early on in our company, we would share our company financials. And if somebody wasn't used to reading a bunch of financial statements, it actually created anxiety. It created overwhelm. They weren't sure what to do with that. So then when you can retool the exact same data in a format, in a display that speaks that person's language, now they get to be part of the conversation. You haven't hidden anything, but you're not scaring them by trying to, all of a sudden make them a finance major. So I think being appropriately transparent during that time is important. But I want to give a Conscious Capitalism shout out here. Before I even knew what Conscious Capitalism was, I heard a friend talk about this concept, and it turns out it comes straight from this group, right? So this was 8 or 9 years ago. It's a friend of mine and Curtis's. And it was this concept that my body wasn't put on earth to pump blood and breathe oxygen. My business wasn't put on earth to make, or wasn't created to make money, but it has to, and my body has to pump blood and breathe oxygen. But I was created by and for something greater. And so therefore my business and myself needs to be geared towards creating something good, right? Creating good and a positive outcome or a positive impact on everybody we connect with, right? The stakeholders of the world. And so I might be in a business right now that's doing okay during this crisis, but I'm not an energy executive. That just happens to be the job that I'm in today. I'm a husband, a father, I'm a friend, I'm a hard worker, and I'm somebody who's trying to impart to make the world a better place by whatever it is I do every day. And right now I'm blessed because I get to be part of a company that is still intact through this COVID stuff. But none of those traits get taken away from me if my business goes bankrupt, if I have to start all over, if I have to sell the house. And hope and optimism should always exist. You can go read Man's Search for Meaning about what happened in the concentration camps. And Viktor Frankl will explain to you that there's hope and optimism for people in a situation that's far worse than what we're experiencing in job loss and what we're facing here. So I've covered a lot of ground there, but I can't see any world other than being hopeful and optimistic while also being transparent and clear about what's going on.
Thank you. That definitely speaks to like the Stockdale paradox and some of those things of being able to balance those two perspectives well. We're going to go on to another question, and Jeff, we'll start with you. Has any of the national relief legislation affected how these struggles are being addressed inside your company?
Sure. We applied for and did the PPP loan, and that's another scenario where we're very thankful for a strong banking relationship, somebody who's been a key stakeholder in our company for the last 9 years. We are watching and trying to figure out how it will impact businesses that are struggling today, if paying their utility bills will help them to get some of their PPP money forgiven. From an energy perspective as a whole, there hasn't been a whole lot of impact other than what's forgivable and what's not forgivable. But some of it is still going to take a few months to play out. You look at what people are constrained with. We're finding that most of our clients aren't thinking about energy right now. They're thinking about payroll. They're thinking about supply chain. And I think that as these first, second, third waves of energy bills aren't being paid, now all of a sudden you see all the high-rise commercial real estate in Manhattan trying to figure out how are they going to pay the energy bill that their tenants aren't paying. So my answer is a little bit of a wait and see, but it's certainly impacting how we think about our specific business and our desire to keep all of our employees, here and battling with us through the pause.
Awesome. Moving over to Karen, has the national relief legislation had an impact on the startups and the companies that you're advising with?
So I did not apply for PPP. I didn't have a need at this stage, but I have been working with other executives who to help them apply, and for those who've received it, and the rollout of it was challenging. I think that if Greg Massey were on the phone, he could talk. He would talk about how he was able to handle it, and what I understand was really well, and it really supported a lot of businesses. So I found that because of the ambiguity. We know what the intent is. We don't know necessarily about the forgiveness. So in the manufacturing realm, it has certainly been helpful. There's more clarity there. With restaurants being hit so hard and the relief to be really pretty swift. But when you're a restaurant and you're not receiving any business for a couple of weeks, you have to make those decisions to let people go. Then to turn around and get the relief, trying to get people to come back at the lowest levels of our populations. Unemployment really is a good deal. And so it's been really tough for some of the restaurant operators to get people to return. So PPE is not having the intended effect in the restaurant industry, at least with the sample that I've been talking to. So I think there's mixed results. I think it was really well intended. They tried to push it to the small businesses it's all businesses, but businesses that really need it to stay afloat in an uncertain time.
And we'll wrap up on this question with Curtis, and then kind of closing thoughts and wrap up from there. Curtis, has this had any impact for the decisions you're making?
Sure. Improving is actually at this point. 2 years ago, we partnered with Trinity Hunt Partners, which is a private equity group, and that has been a wonderful relationship even through this. But one of the complications behind that is how the PPP actually applies to companies that are part of a private equity backed establishment. And if we had waited actually to see if we qualified or not, and we took this up, Greg actually took this very high within the program for us, but we would not have qualified, and it would have ended up costing us probably half a year's profit if we had waited until that time frame to make some of the very hard decisions. And these are hard, and they're not ones that we make without a lot of thought and deep thinking, but a very good intended program. It just when something like that rolls out so quickly, it is going to have its holes and gaps, and but it had to move quickly or it would have been even more adverse. So I have a lot of respect for what the government was trying to do in those programs. We just weren't able to benefit or lean into them.
And as we conclude today, I find myself wondering what advice, what mindset, what mantra has been at the forefront of your mind that might be valuable to other leaders that are wrestling with tough decisions that are going to impact the people around them that they care deeply about. And so, Jeff, what's that thing?
I'll be short and sweet. You said mindset. For me, it's that you don't have to do anything during this time. You get to. This is an opportunity for you to step up as a leader and to face all the tough stuff that you've trained for the coaching you've received, for why you've ever been a part of conversations like this through Conscious Capitalism. You were made for this moment. You get to be a leader during crisis, not you have to. And if you own that mindset, it's not as hard, and you can certainly do a whole lot with it. So you get to, you don't have to.
That's fantastic. Karen, what's top of mind for you?
Well, all that is great. I guess I would add, remember self-care, seek help, talk to other leaders, and go to your networks and seek that help and to bounce ideas, and to look for those silver linings. There's ways to find improvement in a time of crisis.
Thank you. And finally, Curtis, what's that thing for you?
I've mentioned it several times. I would say, as a leader, lean into your guiding principles and all of those values. They are there for a reason. And as Jeff mentioned, there is opportunity. If these were weak inside your organization, or you did not focus on them as much, what I would say is this is probably one of the best times to think about them on a daily basis. Lead from those guiding principles. Let them serve the very purpose that they were intended, which is to guide you and guide your decisions, guide how you treat others, and really help you lead in a time of crisis.
Well, I want to thank all of you personally. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this afternoon. And thank you to everybody that joined the stream. I hope you all have a great afternoon. This video will actually be posted out on YouTube here shortly. Thank you all for spending the time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just about to ask him.